will be up here complaining about my microphone. Clerk, call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner, Precinct 1.
Present.
Andy H. Wynn, Commissioner, Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner, Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner, Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation this morning will be delivered by Ron Bartell from the Auditor's Office. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Thank you, Your Honor. Well, the term invocation comes from the Latin word invocare, which means to call on. So let's pray. Father, today as we begin our meeting, we call on you. We call on you to pour out your presence, your wisdom, your righteousness, and your truth in the deliberations of the day in a way that all can see your will. And we call to you to give these court members the courage to act in accordance with your will. We also call on you, God, to bless this nation and this county. In 2 Chronicles 7, your word says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, I will forgive their sin and heal the land. Our nation needs healing. May we heed the words of 2 Chronicles 7. I thank you that this court recognizes the need to call upon you. And so I ask that you bless the decisions of this day and that they glorify you. And I call on you in the name and through the authority of Jesus, my Savior and intercessor. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Ron. Magnus, agenda announcements.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have two announcements. They're both under the Administrator section. We can go to the Administrator section number 9A5. This is a letter of engagement between Tarrant County and Jackson Walker. We have provided you in your red folder the engagement letter. There's a court communication that was originally in your book. It remains the same. We just have the formal document that we're going to ask that you approve. Also under the Administrator section, under 9A12, which is approval of an employment claim settlement and related documents, there's a new court communication in your red folder. We received the final document yesterday, and that's why we're bringing it to you today. That also is under the consent agenda. Finally, Your Honor, members of the court, I just want to remind the court that next week we do not have Commissioners' Court meeting. So our next scheduled Commissioners' Court meeting will be October 9th. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of September the 18th.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We have a couple of proclamations today. The first is one recognizing the 90th anniversary of the United Way, and I'm going to read that into the record. Whereas the Fort Worth Community Chest, the first community chest in the Southwest, was established in 1922 by community leaders from 14 organizations to consolidate multiple charitable drives, and whereas the organization responded early on to changing community needs, including providing lunches for school children during the Great Depression and raising war chest funds during World War II. And whereas the community chest dissolved in 1954 and was replaced by the Tarrant County United Fund, which later became the United Way of Metropolitan Tarrant County in 1973. And whereas today United Way continues to change and improve lives across our diverse community by prioritizing needs in education, income, and health, forming innovative and effective partnerships with other organizations, and strategically raising and investing resources to make lasting change. And whereas the United Way has acted boldly by setting 10-year goals to foster increased high school graduations, more financially stable families, and more healthy living at home for adults with chronic disabling conditions. And whereas the United Way of Tarrant County this year celebrates 90 years of advancing the common good by encouraging all residents of Tarrant County to give, advocate, and volunteer, now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby express our appreciation to United Way of Tarrant County for its efforts to make our community an even greater place to live, work, and raise a family. In witness whereof, we have hereunder set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 25th day of September 2012, and I'll move its approval.
Second.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We have Tim Kinney, the Executive Director for United Way here. I know we're getting ready for the kickoff of the campaign. We've been talking about it here at the county, and Sarah can get a picture. And I've also been talking with Betsy about how I might be able to hopefully win this year. You ready? So I'll let you say a few words, and again, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Commissioners, thank you very much. Very proud to head an organization that's been around 90 years in Tarrant County, and we have done some pretty amazing things and continue to do really good work in the county. Our staff is made up of passionate, compassionate individuals who really love what they do. I want to invite everybody in the room to Ballroom C at the Convention Center Thursday morning. That's September 27th. And I appreciate the support the county has given us. I think you all have at least one table, if not two tables, and that's wonderful. Our campaign will kick off officially Thursday. The campaign goal this year will be $21 million. Campaign chair is Mr. Matt Rose, Chairman and CEO of BNSF Railway, and Mr. Rose is a very engaged Capitol chair, and I'm very confident that we're going to achieve our goal this year. But thank you for the county's wonderful support and the employees of the county for their wonderful support. We appreciate it, and we need it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim.
And Commissioner Johnson, I believe you have a proclamation.
I do, Your Honor. It's National Night Out, if you would read that into the record.
Whereas the National Association of Town Watch is sponsoring a unique nationwide crime, drug, and violence prevention program on Tuesday, October the 2nd, entitled National Night Out. And whereas the 29th Annual National Night Out provides a unique opportunity for Tarrant County to join forces with thousands of other communities across the country in promoting cooperative law enforcement community prevention efforts. And whereas many citizens play a vital role in assisting the Sheriff's Department through joint crime, drug, and violence prevention in Tarrant County and are supporting National Night Out 2012 locally. And whereas it is essential that all citizens of Tarrant County be aware of the importance of crime prevention programs and the impact that their participation can have on reducing crimes, drugs, and violence in Tarrant County. And whereas law enforcement, community partnerships, neighborhood safety, awareness, and cooperation are important themes of the National Night Out program, now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby call on the citizens of Tarrant County to join us on the National Association of Town Watch in supporting the 29th Annual National Night Out on Tuesday, October 2nd, 2012. And be it further resolved that we hereby proclaim Tuesday, October 2nd, 2012, as National Night Out in Tarrant County, in witness whereof we have hereunder set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 25th day of September, 2012.
I move for its approval.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
I'd like to invite Chief J6 to meet me down at the podium.
Chief. I wanted to present this to you. Thank you, sir. And say congratulations to the job that y'all are doing and always have done, and I appreciate your support and anything you'd like to say or any people you'd like to introduce. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners. The court is gracious to recognize National Night Out. It is a long-term continual program that has continued to grow over the years. It is a tremendous opportunity for law enforcement and neighborhoods to come together to help reduce crime. This program, as the proclamation commented on, was not only about law enforcement, but it's really about neighborhoods. And so in recognition of that, we have a number of colleagues here to recognize this day as well. And I'd like to ask all my law enforcement colleagues and our citizen partners who are here today to please rise and be recognized. Thank you.
We appreciate y'all being here today. I came in here and I thought, uh-oh, is this first Tuesday and did I miss something? Thank y'all for being here. Court members, you have before you the consent agenda.
Move for approval of consent agenda. I'll second.
A motion is second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We have a couple of public hearings this morning. First one is, I guess, Mary Louise.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This morning, I'm asking the court to conduct a public hearing on the county clerk's 2013 Records Preservation Plan. And following the hearing, I'm asking the court to approve the plan I've presented.
I will open the public hearing at this time and ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak to this matter. I do have an audience participation form from Mickey Nile, but he indicates in here that he does not wish to speak, but just wishes to support the budget necessary to complete this task. So I'll make note of that for the record and ask, is there anyone else here wishing to speak? There appearing to be none, then I will close the public hearing.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
I will now open the public hearing. Mr. Wilder.
Judge, members of the court, I would ask you today to approve the records plan for the coming year, which comes out of the same type of fund. These are for historical records that we're making good progress on in a very cost-effective way. I ask your approval for the plan as submitted.
I'll open the public hearing this time and ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak to this matter. Appears to be none, so I will close the public hearing at this time.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Tom.
That's our lunch.
Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we can go to the administrator section, item A1. We're requesting that the Commissioner's Court approve an interlocal agreement. Actually, this will be an amendment to some existing agreements between Tarrant County and the Tarrant County Hospital District for the provision of health care services within the county's jail system.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, if we can go to item number 2, we're requesting that the Commissioner's Court approve action of the Tarrant County Cultural Education Facilities Finance Corporation and the issuance of Series 2012A taxable and Series 2012B non-taxable hospital revenue bonds as it relates to Texas Health Resources. The aggregate principal amount of this is an amount not to exceed $150 million. Texas Health Resources has provided a letter addressing Tarrant County's hub policy and provided notice that there are no restrictions on the facility's properties that restrict the current or future use of the properties for health facilities or governmental purposes.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Finally, members of the court, on item number 3, we're requesting that the Commissioners' Court consider and approve an exception to the county's travel policy as it relates for JP Precinct 6. This will allow Judge Ritchie to attend a JP training school in Rockwall, Texas.
Move approval. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Tidwell.
We have one item for the court's consideration this morning, and that's asking that you receive and file the Tarrant County financial statements for the 11th month ended August 2012.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
First item that we have for your action today is a recommendation from the Risk Management Board, the payment of claim to Aslan DeBose in the Haas Paint and Body Shop in the amount of $1,053.99.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
The second item is the last leg, the last phase of the 2013 budget process. And I'm standing here today recommending the approval of the special purpose budgets.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Rayburn, I'm assuming.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Here to request the approval of one polling place change for Election Day in November. City of Sansom Park, City Hall is not going to be ready due to some construction delays, so we're asking for approval to use the GM Easterling Community Center in Sansom Park for 6 voting precincts.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Phillips.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is requested that Commissioners Court approve a contract with Gsbs Architects for architectural engineering services related to the new Northeast Subcourthouse project.
Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Ms. Glenn.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have 4 items for the court this morning. The first item, we're asking the court to receive and file the personnel agenda.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our second item, we're asking the court to approve a revision to the table of organization to add a project employee position to the criminal court clerk. As your communique explains, criminal court support is requesting that this position be added effective 10/1/2012 with a fiscal impact to the general fund of approximately $42,000.
Was that in this year's budget, this coming year's budget?
It is. It's not classified as such, but it is in the budget.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 3, we're asking the court to approve out-of-class pay extension for juvenile services. This is an item that you've seen a few times before. and we're asking for what we believe to be one additional extension effective 10/1. The court should know that the JCMS manager's position is in the budget for next year, and we are currently recruiting to fill that position.
Move approval. Second.
A motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And our fourth and final item, we're asking the court to approve contribution rates for funding employee and retiree health care medical plan benefits in plan year 2013. We are back after our discussion last week, and if the court recalls on last week, the court actually approved the 2013 plan changes. And so what we have left to work on today and hopefully come to some sort of consensus today will be those premiums that will be in place for our actives and our retirees for 2013. So you have a couple of exhibits, so if we could just sort of get to it. I'll move this out of the way. So your first exhibit is Exhibit A. Exhibit A lists 4 options for the court's consideration for active employees, again, for rates effective 2013. What should look familiar to you is option A. Option A is the one option that we brought to the court on last week. If you recall some of the discussion from last week, what we were trying to accomplish with option A would be to implement premium differentials between our EPO and PPO plans for next year. So you'll see that the resulting premium increases, just as last week, are shown in the white boxes. And so you see under option A, if we implement a premium differential between the EPO and the PPO plans, you'll see the resulting premium rates for 13 and the increases.
These monthly increases are pay period increases?
That's a month. Those are monthly increases, and we're paid 26 times per year. And actually, I believe those deductions are 24. I believe we have 24 deductions.
Lynn, these are these the ones that we discussed earlier?
No. Now we haven't gotten to that particular one yet. This is for our active employee.
Okay.
And it's this sheet. I think that's that sheet you've got right there.
It is, okay.
Should be Exhibit A. So again, option A is the option that you saw last week. What you did not see last week are options B, C, and D. And I'll go through those very briefly. Option B proposes a 4.5% increase to the EPO and PPO premiums, and then an adjustment to the various tiers of $10 for employee-only coverage, and then an additional $20 for each dependent tier, again with the goal being to have differential pricing between the EPO and PPO plan. So as a result, if you look at column B, you should see a column that says 2013 rate. On my handout, it's like in red, orange. Do you see those? Do you see those rates? This is under option B, 2013 rate. Do you see that column? So those rates represent premiums for 2013 under that particular option. The increases are shown in the white box. Again, those are monthly increases. Your option C, again, your increases are shown in the white boxes. Your option C proposes a 4.5% increase to the EPO plan only, with no increases at all in premiums for our PPO participants. So you'll see again, your increases are only shown for the EPO plan. So we're looking at, for employee-only coverage, a $4 a month increase, a $13 a month increase for employee spouse, for employee children. I can't see that. Is it $15? $15. And then for employee families, $16. So again, the goal, if the goal is to have the differential pricing, we do have differential pricing to consider for the court for item C. And then our final option, item D, represents a 4.5% increase to both EPO and PPO current premiums. And again, what this option represents is 4.5% increase in rates, and then there's no differential pricing. The EPO and the PPO are priced exactly the same. So those are the options that we have. Now, on last week, at the end of our meeting, Mr. Bertel handed out a rate sheet. We do have copies. I don't know if Ron has additional copies with him today. We do if he needs those. So I didn't know if you guys wanted to have that discussion in addition to this discussion, or did you want to just talk through these options?
This is just, but I would suggest I think that we might want to delay that because that's a retiree issue. This is active employees only.
And let me say, that I agree, I think with that, but here's the one caveat to that deal, and I didn't realize it until this morning. When we talk, and I believe after looking at the whole discussion centered around the blended rate versus the two accruals, which we've used for the last 2 years, that the blended rate is a better way to go. We didn't recognize, 2 years ago when we were forced to split that by the federal government at that point in time, we did not make any adjustment to the retirees. Now, I know we're talking about retirees now, and I know you're supposed to do that, but I'll bring this around eventually. We didn't have to make any kind of we were basically prohibited by law if we wanted a refund from the federal government from changing our retirees. The next year, we looked at it. We could increase the premium for the retirees. We saw an accrual number that actually represented a split. It wasn't a blended rate, it was a split. And collectively, everybody on the committee said, we can't enforce the matrix that we had set as a court policy, and so we recommended less than that to this court, and we approved that. This year, we went through the same discussions, and at the very end, we were told that, wait a minute, the reason this is so big is because we're using actual versus a blended, which is the same thing that happened last Tuesday. After looking at the blended, I believe that we ought to be looking at a blended rate when we deal with our retirees. That means that the accrual is less on the retiree numbers. It also means, though, that the accrual is more for the active employees. And the way I'll show you this is, I don't know if this is the form that Ron passed out. And I don't know if everybody's got a copy of this. Do you have copies of that right now? We're fixing to get you copies. And I want to show this to you just because we're eventually going to make a decision on it, and hopefully I won't have you any more confused than I am at this point. Well, let me see it. I want to make absolutely sure it's the same thing, because I don't want to.
Tina, did you get Thank you. Yeah. Joyce, let me.
Now I'm gonna ask you to, first off, I want you to look at this sheet right here. And I want you to look at the second column of numbers over, which says total accrual rate for 2013. It's in the yellow box. It's the second set of numbers, and you see that for that first number, it's $842.69. Does everybody see that number?
No.
It's the yellow. Okay, no, you're on the wrong. It needs to be in this sheet right here, which on your screen will be that number right there. That is the split accrual, not the blended accrual, for our active employees. Now, if we go to a blended rate, so that 842 is what we're using as the percentages for all of these columns, A, B, C, and D. Now I want you to go to the white page for just a second, and I want you to look at the second set of shaded numbers right here. In the middle it says current premium, EPO, and current premium, PPO. Those are what our current ones are. Excuse me, move over one to your right one set, and you see the 2013 blended accrual rate, EPO, PPO. Under EPO, you see that 879.32?
Right.
That's the number that corresponds with the 842. So if we believe that we should be using a blended rate for our retirees that we're going to decide on in a few minutes, then the accrual rate that we're using for our active employees is not 842, it's actually 879. So it's a little bit higher. I'm not asking us to go back and recalculate, but as we look across now at A, B, C, and D, I want you to keep in mind that the accrual is really, you know, it's about $36, $37 more than what we're showing in that particular column. If you go down to the next set under the PPO, the 766 is now 788. So now let's talk about the different columns. D, if we want to differentiate between the EPO and the PPO, then that eliminates column D. Oh, and now I'm back on your colored sheets. That would eliminate column D altogether because it just says we're going to charge the same thing for the EPO as we do for the PPO. So first off, I would say I think we need to distinguish some difference because they're different plans, and we need to see about the steerage, and this is something that our consultants have strongly recommended, that we have some differentiation between EPO and PPO. So if you agree with me on that, then just kind of put a little X and D column, and now we're dealing with A, B, and C. Last week, what we basically did with A is we simply took and we added $10 to our PPO for our employee, and then we added $10 more for the EPO in an effort to differentiate. We didn't change any of the employee spouse, family, or employee children in number one, but on the other one, we basically increased it by either $20 or $30.
What other one?
The EPO up above that, and it's the green. It's kind of it's not the green column. It's that column between the blue and the purple. I guess it's aqua or whatever in the heck you want to call it. Column B took the PPO plan, which you see is 91, 294, 225, and 369. Increased it by 4.5%, and then for the EPO plans, again, in order to differentiate, simply added $10 for the employee and added $20 for each one of the other three categories. That's the one I'm kind of leaning toward right now. Don't have a strong feeling one way or another. The third one simply took 4.5% to the EPO numbers and didn't do anything with the PPO. So there's a differentiation between them, but it's $4 for the employee only, and then 13, 15, and 16. And that would probably
That raises the $54,428,931 that we need to cover, that we have budgeted to cover claims.
Yes.
The $54 million is the total.
No, here's the problem.
It would raise
Well-
the portion, it would lower the portion that's coming from the employee.
But if we're looking at the blended,
It would then have to be funded from somewhere.
And this is where I want to bring back the first part of that conversation. first part of that conversation put that 4%, 4.5% to lower accrual numbers than what they actually are if we use the blended rate. And that's why I would kind of lean toward the first B option, because the 842 is now actually 879. It's a little bit higher than what you're seeing over there in that yellow box in the right-hand side of those numbers. And so my preference, I think, would be to go to column B as opposed to column C, because I don't think we will raise the full 54 million because of the fact that we're using a lower accrual than what we should be using on by going to our blended rates.
Okay. Why are we having two plans, DPO and PPO?
Why do we have
What's
two
the purpose
plans?
of doing that? It's options.
Yes, we certainly want to give our employees options, Commissioner Wynn. And before your time on the court, we actually offered 3 options to our employees. So we had an EPO, a PPO, and an HMO. And the HMO went away a couple of years ago. And at that time, there were some changes that were made, some plan design changes that were made to the EPO so that it looked more like the HMO plan did. It wasn't exactly the same. So over the years then, well, a couple of things. We now have fewer options. We have 2 instead of 3. And the EPO plan and the PPO plan, they're not exactly alike, but they look more alike than they have in past years. So there has been some discussion as we look to 2014. We had some conversation last week about health savings accounts and health reimbursement accounts, and those are simply tools to assist health employees in the county with helping our employees and retirees to become more engaged in their health care, and to hopefully help to lower our costs. So as we look at 2014, you may not see an EPO and a PPO plan. You may see one of a plan with some other options offered. So it's sort of been an evolving thing, but that's sort of a very long answer to your question. So we actually had 3 plans. Now we're down to 2.
2014, we may go down to 1.
Well, I would, I don't know. Obviously, it's ultimately up to the court. I'm always a proponent of providing employee with some level of choice. Now, whether that's 2 plans or 3 plans, the court will decide that at the appropriate time. But that's, again, a long answer to your question.
So I guess, I think I'd like to hear some discussion among the rest of you of what y'all feel like or what y'all are kind of thinking of from that standpoint, or questions, because I know I've kind of put a little mud in the water, which I usually do.
I would, number 1, favor the blended rate. And in order to raise the funds needed to cover the accrual, my preference would be C, but if that won't cover the accrual, then I could go with B.
And I can't tell you exactly where we are on the accrual because they've plugged in the numbers as opposed to putting in formulas, so I can't run that. Again, what we're looking at is if your heartburn is on the top part of B, where we increased it by 10 and by 20, depending upon which category you pick, we could reduce that increase to 5 and 10, and I think we would still cover our 54 million or come fairly close to it.
I like those numbers better, but I would certainly like to be certain that we're going to cover the accrual if we do that.
Ron?
Well, if you extend the blended accrual by the active enrollment, the total amount that you generate is $56 million, which is bigger than the $54 million
that Towers Watson said we need for that group. But that would be a portion of what, I mean, it's dividing the two pots, so that $2 million would be really part of what is needed to pay for some of the retirees.
And you're saying that the 56 would be raised if we used B?
If we use the blended rate times the number of active employees at those rates, we would generate $56 million from the active employee group in total. Now, how we divide it up is then still what you're working on, but that would give you $1.5 million more from the active group than the Towers Watson's separate piece shows.
My problem is if we adopt the blended rate, which one of these, B or C, would give us the best chance, or B1, which is what Commissioner Judge Whitley just suggested. B1 is a better set of numbers in my.
I think we can go with B1, and if we don't hit the money that we need, it will be only by a small amount, by a small enough of an amount that we can cover that from the reserves that we have in our.
Okay, would you give us those numbers again that you just suggested?
If we were to go with what I just said on a B1, look in column B. The bottom numbers, the 4, 13, 10, and 7, and 16 increase. I'm just going to talk about increases. Would stay the same. On the other hand, the 101 or the 14 would become a 9, and therefore the 101 would become a 96. The 33 would become
18?
no.
You're taking, because we increased it by 20.
Would become a 23. I'm taking 10 off of it, and the
Right.
314 would become a 304.
20.
And then the 245 would become a 235, and it would be a 20 increase, and then a 26 increase, and the 389 would become a 379.
Now, what was the second one? The second one, I had 20, 26, 9, and then the second tier, an increase of?
The second tier would stay the same. So if we go with column B, and if we do the change of, instead of increasing 5 or 10 and 20 by category, do it 5 and 10, then the new numbers under column B, 2013 rate, the premiums for employee would be 96, employee plus spouse 304, employee plus children 235, employee plus family 379. The increases would be 9, 23, 20,
And
and 26.
And the PPO 4, 13, 10, and 16?
Would stay the same.
And that represents a 7.8% overall increase for the employees.
Well, I don't know what it increased.
It generates $643,000 more than we're currently collecting, which is a 7.8% increase.
What I think it says is, again, just looking at what it says up the top, the PPO goes up. It will have gone up by less, using a blended rate, it will have gone up by less than 4.5%. And the EPO employee will be some number that will be calculated later. So
I would be prepared to offer a motion in 2 parts. Number 1, that we accept the blended rate for under 65 retirees, and that we adopt the plan that we have called B1, which is the numbers that Glenn just outlined as the contribution rates for current employees.
And I'll second it just so we can have some more discussion. Andy?
Based on my memory, are there other increases besides these that we are talking about? There are other increases.
Yes, last week when when the court approved plan design changes, perhaps, Commissioner, what you're remembering is our dental plan, one of our dental plan, we had some premium increases on it. We had premium increases on our vision plan. Are those what you're recalling? Yes, sir. We did have, you don't have those documents, but I can run through those really quickly.
So we have to lump those increases together to determine the overall impact.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir. That's correct. As I mentioned, and again, I'm going to, I have it, thank you. I'm going to address just those increases that employees are going to be responsible for. And if you recall, we gave you well, there were several documents last week, but we had a document where we showed current 2012 and then 2013 rates. And if you recall, we went through and we only discussed those that were highlighted in yellow because those items represented increases. So as I mentioned, we had their vision increases to the vision plan, and I can find that.
Tina, can I ask, while you're looking
Sure.
at that, just, I want to, Ron?
Yes, sir.
I would like for you, as quickly as you can, if we assuming that we were to go with the blended rates that you put out on your schedule and actually went with the monthly premiums that you indicated based upon those same percentages on there, I would like to see that if you think, if your calculation will show that we'll raise the $59,266,641, which everybody's asking us, which the consultants have asked or told us that we need to raise. So take B1 as we just approved it. No, we haven't approved it yet, but take the B1 that we've got. Take the numbers that you're showing in your monthly EPO and monthly PPO, realizing that some of those are decreases. And then,
Are we still talking actives?
you what?
Are we talking actives or combining the actives and the?
We're talking everybody. I'm trying to make sure we're going to get to the 59 million that they've told us that we need to have.
And that's the question I was going to ask.
I know, and I want to make sure that I'm not missing something and that by doing this, we're not going to come up too short.
Well, the number that you just put in, that you guys have proposed at this point, lowers the amount from your A by about 300,000, no, I'm sorry, about, you've got 9,033,204. So it's minus that by about $200,000. So that means there's $200,000 more has to come from reserve. Since the county's contribution is remaining flat, it's coming from reserves anyway. So if we lower that amount by $200,000, then we'll need $200,000 more from reserve. The calculation on the over 65 retirees, the total increase at the 15% was only $130,000. So if we do something less than that, it would be a minimal differential. So we're probably looking at a maximum exposure of about $250,000 to the reserve, additionally coming from the reserve, above and beyond what the county's already taken out.
If that's all we're talking about, I think we're okay. I just don't want it to be I don't want to wake up tomorrow and realize that what we've done has cost us a couple $1 million.
That's a good idea.
If it does, we're going to know where to find you.
So Commissioner Wynn, if I could, your question about other increases?
A couple more months.
No, we'll know where the check's going. It won't be a problem.
We do have increases for 2013 to the vision plan. And Joyce, do you happen to know what that percentage is for the vision plan? So we do have increases for 2013, and I can get that percentage for you in just a moment. We have the PEBC dental plan, which is one of our dental plan options. Those premiums increased by 5.1%. So that was the other place. And if you recall, we did have some discussion about plan design changes. You recall that we discussed the Generic First program and had a pretty lengthy discussion about this, I don't want to call it an incentive, but the program promotes the use of generic drugs.
Right.
Do you recall that? Okay. So there.
My computer now.
Okay, great.
I went back to last week.
So there could certainly be some additional cost to employees in that instance who request a brand name drug in lieu of a generic that might be available. So that might be an additional increase. We talked about the flex account, the decrease from $5,000 to $2,500. So that could certainly and will impact some employees who've elected the higher option of $5,000 for their flex accounts. And I believe that that's all. So you're correct. This won't be the only increase that employees see.
Any other questions with regards to the motion? Please vote. The motion passes unanimously.
So
now, let's take this out of order, and let's, if we can, if you don't mind, and let's go to the retiree, because I think we're pretty well, that may be not out of order. That might be the next one.
Yeah, that's the next exhibit. Now, again, the accrual rates that we used on our exhibit are not the blended rates. These are the actuarial rates. One comment that I want to make sure that the court is aware of, this conversation that we've had about blended versus actuarial rates. And as the judge mentioned, the court made a decision a few years ago to move to actuarial rates as opposed to blended rates for our retiree group. And initially, the reason that the move was made, actually two reasons primarily, as the judge pointed out. At that time, we were pursuing a reimbursement that the federal government made available to those employers that offered retirement to what we call early retirees, our retirees who are under 65. And one of the stipulations was that for us to be able to participate in that program, then the actual data that was submitted had to reflect actuarial rates. So we moved in that direction. We filed our claims and have yet to be reimbursed, and we're hopeful that that's going to happen. The other thing that we'd had some discussion about for several years, even prior to the federal government implementing that program, was whether we wanted to move to a place where we had, I guess, a clear picture of the actual impact of the early retirees to the plan as opposed to the active. So that conversation had happened even before the reimbursement program. So those things were sort of pushing us in that direction, if I can phrase it that way. Now, in lieu of recent discussions that we've had about, well, does it make sense to stick with the actuarial rate? Should we go back to the blended rate? We posed that question to Towers Watson, our benefits consultant, and the response that they provided us is that the risk, if you want to call it that, that the county might experience by moving back to the blended rate. The consultant has concerns that for Gsb valuation purposes, that we might have trouble getting an actuary to actually sign off on the Gsb valuation if we're using blended as opposed to actuarial rates. So that's sort of, I want to put that out there because that's what the consultants have said.
And that's something we're going to have to talk about.
Absolutely.
And it's something that we're going to have to look at, and we've said to this court that we're going to do that over the next year. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you that based on the size of the number that they gave us, I have no question that some actuary will be glad to sign off on it.
So that's, again, so that all court members are aware that that's been discussed in recent days. So,
Of course, let me interject something. I think to clarify, I think Gsb requires that we have a separate rate for retirees because it recognizes they're a different rate. When we then calculate that number and decide how much we are going to pay versus how much the employee pays, it really doesn't matter because if whatever the number is, if we multiply the percentage times a bigger number and we lower the percentages to get the same amount of money, the same net differential is there. So, yes, we have to have a different rate actuarially for the Gsb calculations, but they don't mandate how we decide how much to charge the employees.
that's correct.
So we can go through the calculations and generate the same amount of money that we've been generating, and it just filters through the calculations. So if we want to generate the same amount of money from the retirees that we used the blended rate on when we did the blended rate, and we want to generate the same amount of money times a bigger number, then we just lower the percentages. So it's mechanically not a prohibition that we use a different rate. It just takes some adjustment, and you just have to do the calculations.
And I agree with that. And really, that's no different than what we do for our actives. I mean, we have actuarial rates, but in terms of how we budgets, not to be redundant, a specific amount for each participant or each employee in the plan. So I agree with Ron. But again, I want to be clear that the court is aware that that's sort of a, not disclaimer, but that's a cautionary note that Towers Watson has raised.
And it's something that we're going to have to sit down and discuss. And we're going to be
Absolutely.
discussing a lot of the assumptions with our actuaries, and that may be,
Yeah.
we may have to go back and, as Ron said, make that separate
Yep.
calculation.
With much delight, we'll be doing that. So your Exhibit B, if we could move to your Exhibit B.
Well, let me just say this, as opposed to going to Exhibit B, because again, Exhibit B does not use a blended rate.
That's correct.
And since we just discussed going to a blended rate, then I think if we, instead of going to Exhibit B, if we go to this sheet, this white sheet that Joyce passed out to us just a few moments ago, if we look at that,
We just decided that we're going to use a blended rate.
For actives.
yes, but we have not set the premium, we have not necessarily just said we're going to set the premiums yet. We just decided we were going to use a blended rate. I think we then have to go over here and approve the rates that are on this sheet. And it may just be that simple, but I think we haven't done that yet. We have not actually approved the rates. And I do want to call a couple of things to your attention, just so you're aware of it. I believe that we are to approve page 1 of this as it's printed. Now, what that means, if you look at it, first off, go over there and realize that in the census column, there are a lot of these numbers that you see on the far right-hand side. They're big numbers, but nobody's in that group. If the census is 0, nobody's paying. So you see that in the one where they've been with us less than 10 years, oh gosh, they have to pay 100% of it, and none of them are paying. Nobody has enrolled in our program if they've retired pre-65. Going down to the ones who've been here between 10 and 14 years, we have 4 people, 3 retiree only, 1 retiree plus child, and that one is in the PPO plan and the other one is in the EPO. The other 3 are in the EPO. And if you go over to the right-hand side and you look at the rate under the, again, established by our matrix, it says that if someone worked for the county from 10 to 14 years, that they would have to pay 75% of the premium. That 75% would be $659.49, and that would actually result in an $18.41 increase in their monthly premium. However, go down to that 1 retiree plus child, that premium is going to be $906, and that actually represents a decrease. And if you, it's not, well, it's $92 a month, that's, I'm talking, because that one's in the PPO.
Okay.
And so if you go down to the next set, you see the retirees 15 to 19. We've said that the employee has to pay 55% of those premiums. The EPO, they're going to have, those 10 are going to have a $13.51 increase. The one is going to have a decrease in the PPO. So you can go down each one, go across. I would recommend that we use this, the blended rate, and the monthly EPO and the monthly PPO premiums shown in the columns to the right, based upon that blended rate.
Move approval.
And I'll second it. Questions? The increases are going to, slight increases in the EPOs, decreases in all of the PPO categories where there are actual current participants. The highest increase in the EPO category is in the retiree plus spouse, for which we have 3 that have 15 to 19 years, and that's a $62 a month increase. And we have 3 people who are currently in that category.
And overall, that generates an increase of about 2.6%. Total amount to be collected at that is $898,000. So that's approximately $100,000 less than option A. So added to the 195, that would be 300,000 total exposure to the reserve, which is a $10 million reserve. A relative.
I think we're in pretty good shape. Go with it. Any other discussion?
Well,
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Now, on this next group, you're on your own.
Before we move to that group, and maybe this is outlined in Ron's document, I don't know, but I want to remind the court that we do have a very small group of retirees at this point. We have 7. There are grandfathered retirees. These are the retirees that retired prior to 10/1 of '05 when we implemented our matrix. And are those folks reflected here, Ron?
No.
no, that's not in the matrix. That's just.
Okay. So if you look at my Exhibit B, that's in your book, hopefully your court book, do you see the little chart? It's a very small chart to the right of the larger chart. Do you see that? Yes? You see
I
the
would move approval of the 4.5% increase to those particular individuals.
Second.
Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We have one additional group. We have our 65 and over group.
Exhibit C, right?
It's my Exhibit C. And as we discussed last week, again, these are 65 and older retirees. We offer those individuals 2 plan options. A Medicare supplement plan. You see those rates at the very top. We offer a Medicare HMO. It's the 3rd set of rates that you see. There are no proposed rate increases for those plans. And so as a result, you see in the white column, you see the 0 monthly rate increases. At the very top, that's the supplemental plan. And then if you sort of scoop down just a bit, you'll see $0 increases for the Medicare Advantage plan. So there are no increases on the plan. We're not obviously recommending any rate increases. Now, these retirees, again, these folks are 65 and older. Some of these individuals do cover dependent spouses, children, grandchildren who are not Medicare eligible. And so that those dependents have coverage, we offer a PPO plan for those dependents. And so the second set of rates that you see, the white column represents a 4.5% increase to cover those dependents. And then at the very bottom, you also see the dependents for those retirees in the Medicare Advantage plan. And again, those increases represent a 4.5% increase. And again, the 4.5% increase represents the adjustment in the accrual rate that the consultants proposed for 2013.
So it would be a little, those accrual rates are a little low based upon us using a blended rate.
Correct.
Explain to me again, I know I asked this question last week, why the Medicare supplement and this other thing,
The Advantage?
the Advantage, don't include Part D?
They do include Part D, Commissioner. The retiree can elect not to have Part D, which is drug coverage. I believe we had one of our retirees who made that election in the last couple of years. And so we want to have rates for those retirees who might elect out of the drug coverage. But obviously, you can see the majority, well, I don't know that you have, yeah, you do have census. You can see that we don't have anybody without the drug coverage. It's very rare, but we've had it happen one or two times. So those are the rates that we're proposing, are rate increases for 2013.
Do I have a motion to approve the rate increase? Approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I will say that, again, I think Mr. Manius has indicated that our benefits committee, and y'all have indicated, so I think we're going to have some work sessions where we're really going to look at this whole discussion as it surrounds our medical insurance and as it pertains to our Gsbs liability. So I think that, you know, what we're going to try to do is first educate and then try to make some decisions going forward, not only about our active employees, but also about our pre-65 retirees and our post-65 retirees. The indication that I think was somewhat surprising to all of us at the last meeting that we had with the actuaries was that of our unfunded liability, about 2/3 of that pertained to the 65 and older group, and that only about 1/3 of it pertained to our pre-65. I think, for the most part, we believe that that liability was more focused on the ones under 65 than the ones over. And so I think as we try to understand that better over the next couple of years, or over the next year, it will mean that we're going to be looking at making some changes, and we'll just have to figure out as a court what the best way to approach that is. And I think also at the same time, maybe give everybody a little bit better understanding of what this unfunded liability is that we keep referring to work comes to. And so by being at work session, then hopefully everybody will be able to get an understanding of what we're discussing on this deal. Joyce, Tina, everybody on the benefits committee, I appreciate the work and the hours of work that you put into this, and I know we're all going to be heading forward down that trail pretty quickly, but it was a good effort, and I appreciate everybody in HR and audit and budget, GK, and everybody else in helping with that process.
It would also be helpful for me if you can provide some sort of a briefing or a summary of how the new healthcare reform law will potentially affect us in the long run. Can you help us gain that understanding?
We may need to bring someone in to do that, but yes, we will.
a lot of that's still in the, I mean, that has been the biggest part of the problem, is that we still don't have, in some instances, the regs and the policies still haven't been written, and we just don't know what's going to happen. We just don't know. And that's, I know it's frustrating, but that's just where we are from that standpoint.
And one thing also, Ron, you're absolutely right. The thing is with the Affordable Care Act is that it doesn't take effect all at once. It rolls itself out. Like in 2013, we're coming up now. One of the major changes of those people that contribute to their 125 plan, that maximum number is going from 5,000 to 2,500. So things like that, you don't really see a lot of it, but it'll have an impact.
Purchasing, Mr. Beecham. Does your head coach know what state he's in yet?
We were at a terrible...
He was in Alabama yesterday.
I heard that. We were at a terrible disadvantage Saturday because the guys from Rutgers not only go to class, but they play football, unlike the teams we played and some that we might play soon. The best thing that happened to me Saturday was my people were in the paper, and it says we're winning against the hunters and the trappers. But
There's the
thank you,
editor, I mean, the author of that article.
we do have 4 items for your consideration this morning.
That picture looked a little bit better than your football team.
Moving right along.
We've got a lot left in the tank. We may use it Saturday or not. Item number 1 is a bid award recommendation for bid 2012-146. This is our annual contract for an SAP application service provider. Recommendation be toward the Realtek Incorporated, amount of $342,000. If this is approved, we're also seeking contract approval from the court.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 2 is a bid award recommendation for bid 2012-151. This is our annual contract for the purchase of our police package vehicles. Recommendation be toward a per enterprise basis, awarding to the 12 vendors as shown in the court communique. Bids received from Metter, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, and Reliable Chevrolet did not include the delivery information on certain items and should be rejected for those 3 items.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our third item is also a bid award recommendation for bid 2012-156. This is our annual contract for microfiche and microfilm equipment maintenance and supplies. Recommendation be toward a per enterprise basis, awarding to Cogniserve LLC. We received 2 bids from Inception Technologies that did not sign their bid, and a bid from Precision Products that did not meet the toner's requirements and should be rejected.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 4 is a bid award recommendation for bid 2012-170. This is our annual contract for janitorial services. Our recommendation be to award on a per total price by group. We received 2 bids, one from Triangle Services and Unit Care Building Maintenance that did not sign their bid document and should be rejected. We received a bid from Members Building Maintenance that did not include all the pricing, and so their bid could not be considered. And also there were 9 vendors identified by the auditor's office that submitted incomplete financial records. With that in mind, our award recommendation would be to award the Group 1 buildings, which are the downtown campuses, to UMB Enterprise as a primary, second Oriental Building Services, and the alternate CTJ Maintenance. Group 2, which is the Resource Connection Buildings, primary vendor UMB Enterprise, secondary Sizemore Incorporated, and the alternate CTJ Maintenance. And the third group, all the other outlying buildings, as our primary CTJ Maintenance, secondary Oriental, and the alternate UMB Enterprise.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Are these all new? We're going to change out everybody that we have?
No, sir. Pretty much pretty much the same group.
Good.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Ms. Green. How are you?
Just fine, thank you. And yourself?
I hope so.
Your Honor, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve the memorandum of agreement with Texas LTC Limited Partnership for the acquisition of parcel 10 containing 1,308 square feet. It's required for the widening and improvement of US 377 from Winscott Lakeview to IH 820 in Benbrook. This particular property is in a real estate investment trust, and pursuant to their bylaws, they require an agreement to sell anything from that trust.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Commissioner Johnson, you got a few interlocal agreements on that.
I do. I would move approval of item 901A through L.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Appointments? Being none, then you have before you the claims, including the addendum.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Before we get to our briefing items, I want to recognize former Dallas Commissioner Ken Mayfield. He slipped in the back there.
And former president of NACO.
Yes, and I couldn't figure out why we had the cameras here, but now that Dallas County Commissioners are here, I can understand why the cameras are here. Ken, good to see you again. Briefing items, Mr. Manion.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have one item this morning for the court. It's item A, which is an update on the West Nile virus. Dr. Parker is here to address the court at this time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Since the last Tarrant County Commissioners Court update last week, we've had 4 new cases reported, so that's over the entire week, 4 new cases reported, which our total stands at 261, 169 West Nile fever, 94 neuroinvasive disease. At the last testing on Friday, there were no positive mosquito pools, and currently we're finalizing preparations for the after-action review and report.
We're trending down.
We're trending down. We have trended down, and we're staying at very low levels. The cases that have been reported over the past week, those are not recent cases. Those are cases that have been, that the lag time in reporting, it just came to us, and those have been in previous months.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Just one comment on the West Nile virus issue. As you know, we have a weekly call with all the municipalities and the ISDs and your offices. We're going to have that again tomorrow, but the group has decided that beginning in October that we're going to go to an every other week call. So we will not have one the week of the 1st, but we'll have one the 2nd week in October.
Thank you.
Your Honor, that's all we have at this time.
I would like, if we could today, one of our former employees in the IT area, Thomas McLean, passed away this past week. He had been with the county for many years, had been a project manager, and I would like for us to close the court in his memory today, if that would be all right with everyone.
Absolutely.
We will now recess from open session and proceed to closed session to discuss items exempted under 551.071.
See that obit? Who is that?
12 o'clock, I'm impressed. Mike's on, isn't it?
Having returned from our closed meeting, we will now address the following matters.
Under the District Attorney, item F1, we're requesting authorization for the DA's office to file suit against Alan Collier and Debbie Barnes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. The motion will pass unanimously as soon as Mr. Wynn passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Unanimously. That's it.
That computer won't push that button.
We're adjourned.